Okay, so welcome back to another plant identification series. If you haven't seen the previous video on leaf venation, please go back and watch that one first, because that's very important to understand before you try to understand compound leaves. Alright, so right off the bat we are looking at a simple leaf, which is essentially the terminology for a non-compound leaf. And yeah, looking at this, we have the main midrib and then the secondary ribs that branch off of that. And just keep in mind that these veins are technically kind of proto-stems that emerge from the main stem of the plant. And these proto-stems have been infilled with lamina that produces this entire leaf blade. And essentially what we're looking at with compound leaves is where we have a reversion, where we have less lamina that doesn't quite infill the entire blade itself, and it leaves gaps. So you may remember from earlier videos with leaf shape, we can get kind of deep lobes on a leaf. If that goes to the extreme and goes all the way to the midrib and kind of separates bits of lamina into kind of individual structures, that's when we get a compound leaf. So let's take a look at a compound leaf to show what that looks like. So this here is tallway, I think, and this entire structure from my finger and thumb currently all the way out to here is a single leaf split into individual leaflets, because the infilling of the lamina didn't complete its job essentially. So you could imagine that if the lamina extended all the way down here, you'd have one large leaf with pinnate venation, if that makes sense, because remember, this leaf venation here is pinnate. We've got pinnate venation, and this would be a pinnate venation leaf if it hadn't been split up into a compound leaf. So we do actually retain that terminology. So this is what we call a pinnately compound leaf instead, because it does have that pinnate venation underlying structure to it. Now, one tricky thing about this is that it can be quite hard to know whether this is a pinnately compound leaf, or if this is actually just a stem with multiple leaves on it. And you may need to jump back to the first video in this series where I talk about nodes and what that means. So the node is where a new leaf or other structure can grow from, and that's what we have at the very base down here. We've got a node that this compound leaf has emerged from. So this here is the node, and one thing you'll notice about the node is that it has a leaf bud at it. So you can see the leaf bud there. That's a giveaway that it is a node and that it can produce more growth. If we look at the leaflets themselves, there is no node there. It's literally just the leaf looking thing attached directly to the central midrib of this leaf. No node, no leaf buds, no stipules, anything like that. So this entire thing is the leaf, and sometimes it can be a little bit more tricky than that if there are no kind of giveaways that you're looking at a node or not. With this species it is kind of easy because you can see we've got stipules there that give away that it's a node, but some species may not, and it can be tricky. However, one giveaway is that leaves always grow in succession to each other, because we have a main stem, and every time the stem produces a new node, that's when the leaves start to grow. Stem extends, leaf starts to grow. Stem extends, leaf starts to grow. So that gives us an understanding of timing. The lower leaves are going to be older, higher leaves are going to be younger. A leaf always forms kind of as one structure. So it all forms together as one structure. So you can see this younger leaf here, all the leaflets are small together, growing at the same time. Older leaf, leaflets have done a bit more growing, a little bit bigger, all together. If, on the other hand, each of these were individual leaves, this one here would be a lot bigger than this one here, because it would have grown first, if that makes sense. So this one would have been first to grow, it would be bigger, slightly smaller, slightly smaller, slightly smaller, smallest, because of that timing of stem growth and leaf growth. So that's how we know that this is a compound leaf, because it's all young at the same time. Hopefully that makes sense. I've got an example here of a non-compound leaf that may get mistaken for a pinnately compound leaf. So you may look at this and think, okay, that might be a petiole, and maybe these are all leaflets. But we need to look at the growth timing here. We've got oldest leaves, slightly younger because they're smaller, slightly younger again. These didn't all grow at the same time. Stem grew, leaves grew. Stem grew a bit more, new leaves grew. Stem grew a bit more, new leaves grew. And again, we can also look at here to see if we've got any node characteristics, which we indeed do. You've got a leaf bud, and you do have little kind of stipule-like things at the base of these leaves as well. So keep that in mind as well. And also, flowers will never grow on a compound leaf. So this is definitely simple leaves, node, flowers growing from the node. Keep that in mind as well. Alright, so we've only covered pinnately compound leaves here. So this is a pinnately compound. Remember that feather-like shape? There are two types though. We've got this one is a imparipinnate compound leaf, and that means that it has a single leaflet at the end here. If it did not have a single leaflet and it just had the pairs of leaflets, then it is called a paripinnate compound leaf. So that is only one type of compound leaf though. We do have another one. We'll see if we can find one, because you'll remember from the previous video that I covered both pinnate venation, and I also covered palmate venation. So the same thing can happen with a palmate leaf. So the infilling, if it doesn't completely infill between each of those ribs, you can get individual leaflets in this palmate pattern instead of the pinnate pattern that we looked at earlier. So that's our mission now, is to find a palmately compound leaf. And here's one here. So this is Pseudopanax lawsonii, and this is a palmately compound leaf. So you can see we've got 5 leaflets attaching to a single point. So that's the palmate nature that we saw on the venation earlier. So we've got individual leaflets once again, and yeah, one thing to keep in mind here is that we still have a petiole. So remember, the petiole is the leaf stalk, a single petiole, and then the leaflets, if they had their own little petioles, their own little stalks, those would be called petioles. We haven't seen that yet, either in this one or the previous one as well. They were both what we call sessile, meaning they have no stalks. So it still has a petiole, but the leaflets themselves are sessile. And again, we can use that same trick to determine whether we're looking at a whorl of leaves. So you may remember from leaf arrangement, if we had more than 3 or more leaves per node, we may call it a whorl of leaves. You may be tricked and think this is a whorl of leaves here, but remember, we need to look to see if there's a node, any node characteristics where the leaves or leaflets in this example, whether there's any node characteristics, and there are not any node characteristics on this. You'd be searching for a little leaf bud emerging there, or any other stems or branches emerging out, or flowers or anything like that. But if there's none of that, and you look at the base of the petiole and you do see node characteristics down there, a little bit difficult to look down there right now, but you look for node characteristics there, and that can help you determine whether it's a compound leaf or a bunch of simple leaves in a whorled arrangement. But again, look for whether the leaves are all forming at the same time. So you can see that this This leaf here is younger because it'll be higher on the stem. It would have started growing last. Or maybe this one here is actually the latest to start growing. And remember, a leaf always kind of grows at the same, or they all grow together. Even all the leaflets on a compound leaf, they all grow together. So you can see that the fresh growth, all the leaflets are the same colour, compared to the older growth below, all the same colour. So yeah, it does take a little bit just to get your eye adjusted to determining whether it's a compound leaf or many simple leaves, but just get out there and look at different leaves and try and figure it out. So that was compound leaves, or that was palmately compound and also pinnately compound, or both the types of pinnately. There was imparipinnate with a single end leaflet as well, and then paripinnate would just be the pairs of leaflets and no end leaflet. I've got another one here, typical clover leaf. You can see that we've got 3 leaflets. So this is also a compound leaf, but we don't actually call this pinnate or palmate. You may be closer saying it's palmate, but if it's just got 3 leaflets, we call it trifoliate. So we've got a trifoliate compound leaf here. But yeah, so hopefully that gives you a good introduction to compound leaves, and that it made sense, because it is a bit of a tricky thing to wrap your head around. And let me know if you've got any questions about it in the comments, but otherwise just get out there and have a look at a bunch of leaves and see if you can determine whether they are compound or not. Got an example here. Apiaceae family, there's a compound leaves here. So we've got pinnately compound. Yeah, pretty straightforward. Additionally, ferns are a good one to look at. They tend to be much more extreme versions of compound leaves. So this entire frond here is a single leaf, by the way, and this is what we call bipinnate, because it's pinnate off here, but then it pinnates again, or actually it's almost tripinnate, because it just keeps on dividing. But yeah, just give Google Images a search and search up bipinnate, tripinnate, pinnate, and whatnot, and it will kind of give you a good idea of what's happening there. And yeah, that's all for today. I will see you in the next one. Alright, bye bye.